Hey everybody, welcome to the pre-show for Monster Monday on July 5th, 2021. I am your host, DM Gallibond. Hope that you all had a wonderful, for those of you in the US, hope you had a wonderful Independence Day. Hope everything went really great this weekend for you. For those of you outside the US, I hope your July is getting off to a good start. We are going to be getting underway here in just a few minutes. Before we do, I want to remind you that the music you are listening to is Stream Beats. It is copyright-free music made by streamers for streamers, put together by Harris Heller, who is the mind behind Alpha Gaming. He has collected all of this music copyright free. You won't get any copyright strikes for using it in your live streams or your YouTube or TikTok or other videos. So check out Streambeats over at streambeats.com. Also want to say a big shout out over to Mo at the Tabletop Bellhop. Mo is the OG when it comes to all things tabletop gaming. He has everything about card games, board games, tabletop RPGs, party games, traditional games, games you build on the tabletop, whatever it is. News, reviews, upcoming releases, industry analysis, game developers, and all kinds of, just a galaxy of media, from blogs to podcasts to video streams dedicated to all kinds of tabletop games. Everything from live streams of people playing games to newsworthy discussions of things going on in the industry or things going on with a particular developer or analysis of a individual game. Alright, so I am going to go grab a drink. I'll be back in a couple of minutes, and between now and then, just enjoy the Stream Beats. Talk to you in a few. Okay, everybody, we're inside 2 minutes before we go live. Just want to remind you that the music you're listening to in the background is Stream Beats, copyright-free music made by streamers for streamers. You will never get a copyright hit if you're using Stream Beats on your Twitch stream, your YouTube live stream, or your videos that you post to YouTube or any of the other platforms that are out there, TikTok, whatever. And want to send a shout out to Mo over at the Tabletop Bellhop. Mo is the OG when it comes to all things tabletop games. Card games, board games, party games, you name it, he's got it. Tabletop RPGs, all kinds of news, and a galaxy of social media ranging from blogs to live streams to podcasts about all aspects of tabletop games. Check him out over at the tabletopbellhop.com. And in just a few seconds, we will be going live with our discussion of the Manticore. Hope you're having a great evening. And we'll go ahead and turn the music down here. All right. And welcome everybody to Monster Monday for Monday, July 5th, 2021. I am your host, DM Gallibond, and tonight on Monster Monday we are going to be looking into the history of the Manticore. The Manticore, which is a monster that's been around for a long time, and there's a really interesting thing you can do with this one based on, well, I'll let you see what it's based on. And we also may have a special guest join us tonight during our episode. So go ahead and strap in for this one. All right. So the Manticore. Manticore is one of those weird monsters that's an amalgamation of other different types of things. It is similar to, but not exactly completely different from a griffin, in that, yes, it has a lion's body and wings, but it's got a humanoid head and it's got tail spikes. So let's see how the description of this monster has changed from over the ages. So going all the way back to when it first was introduced into the game back in Basic D&D. A Manticore is a horrid monster with the body of a lion, leathery bat wings, a tail ridged with spikes, and the face of a man with large, sharp fangs. Ooh, creepy. Basic D&D. Okay, now, in first edition, the coloration of the Manticore is that of its various parts: lion-colored body, bat brown wings, and human flesh head. Okay, and then in second edition, they said the Manticore is a true monster with a leonine torso and legs, bat-like wings, a man's head, a tail tipped with iron spikes, and an appetite for human flesh. Ooh. Okay. Hey, Skyland. Glad you could join us. All right. So now let's talk a little bit about Manticore lore. And just as we like to look at the Manticore, or at the monster in its description from the oldest edition to the newest, we look at the lore from the newest edition back towards the oldest. So in 5th edition, what we learn about the lore of the Manticore is that a Manticore isn't particularly bright, but it possesses a malevolent nature and the ability to converse. In the course of attacking, it denigrates its foes and offers to kill them swiftly if they beg for their lives. If a Manticore sees an advantage to be gained by sparing a creature's life, it does so, asking for a tribute or sacrifice equal to its loss of food. And so that's what we learn about the way manticores behave in 5th edition. So now in 4th edition, we learn that manticores have 3 rows of teeth which constantly grow throughout their lives. They often leave old teeth and iron spikes in the bodies of their mauled victims as sure signs of manticore attack. Now that's kind of a cool thing that you can use if you're a DM and you want to maybe there's been attacks and nobody knows what's been killing people or killing creatures, and your party goes out to investigate. You can say, oh, hey, there's like these teeth and these iron spikes. Kind of weird. And maybe have people do some investigation checks or nature checks or things like that. See if they can figure out what those teeth and spikes belong to. So that's kind of a cool thing for, building up the world in your party just by simply using some of the lore about the monster. All right, then in 3rd edition, we learned that a manticore begins most attacks with a volley of spikes and then closes. In the outdoors, it often uses its powerful wings to stay aloft during battle. So, as we'll see, based on the challenge rating of this monster, it can pose, because of that flying ability and its ability to attack both in melee and from long range, it can pose a real threat to parties that are suited to face this monster. Oh, wait. What's that? I said we were going to have a special guest, and yes, we do. It's Drill Sergeant Gallibond.
All right, you maggots. I know you're nothing but a bunch of jumped-up farmhands. You'd get killed by the first goblin if it weren't for me here giving you some special advice. Now, what I'm going to tell you today, I'm going to tell you how to recognize the difference between a Lammasu and a Manticore. Now, these two monsters are obviously very different, and nobody but a dang fool that was drunk in the barroom last night and thrown in the drunk tank this morning would fail to tell the difference between these. Now, these, if you want to look at the top image here, this is your Lammasu. The Lammasu, they're very friendly. And you can tell they're very friendly by the feathers on their wings. And you notice they have a very nice face that does not have a lot of fangs in it. And their tail. Do you see any spikes on that tail? No. You see hair on that tail, not spikes. Now, this is why I don't understand why crazy adventurers would ever mistake these two. Now, you look at this manticore down at the bottom. And what do you see there? Those wings? Are there any feathers on those wings? No, maggots, there are not. Those are bat wings. And look at that face. Look at all those fangs in that mouth. How could you ever mistake that for a Lammasu? And then, if that doesn't give you any hints, look at that tail. See those spikes all down the tail and the big cluster of spikes at the end? That's how you tell the difference between a Lammasu and a Manticore. And if you don't remember anything else from my little presentation today, I want you to remember this saying. Bat wings are bad. That Manticore is mad, mad, mad. And feathers make you smile. The Lammasu will be a friend for a while.
Okay, Drill Sergeant. Okay, I think we get the picture. Okay, thank you. Go to the mess hall and get something to drink. All right? Okay, good. I think he's gone. Whew. Okay, all right. Sorry about that interruption there, folks. But that's going to be a little bit of something that we will talk about later on in our presentation is exactly what is this Lammasu? Where did it come from? And how can you use it in your game to kind of as reskinning options for the Manticore? All right. We all know that creature types in D&D have monstrosities, and the Manticore is a true monstrosity. I'm sorry, all creatures have a type. The Manticore is a monstrosity. That's the creature type. And notice here, this image. This is out of 3rd edition D&D. You see how much different this edition of the Manticore looks. It looks, it says it has a humanoid face, but that kind of looks like a flattened jaguar face to me. It doesn't look much like a humanoid face at all. Okay, but that was the rendition of the Manticore in the 3rd edition Monster Manual. So monstrosities are just monsters that defy categorization anywhere else. So you'll find them just sort of as a catch-all category, and that's where the Manticores fit in. Okay, now we are going to go and we're going to take a look at the mechanical features of the Manticore throughout the editions. And as we said, Manticores came into the game all the way back in Basic D&D, the original edition of D&D. Armor class of 4, 6+1 hit dice, would move 120 feet on the ground or 180 feet in the air. Now that's full round movement. In a combat round, that would be 40 feet on the ground and 60 feet in the air. And its claws or its attacks. Notice something about this, and this is something that has stayed true in 5th edition. It can either have 2 claws and a bite, or it shoots 6 tail spikes. And the damage for each claw is 1d4, the damage for the bite is 2d4, and the damage for each spike is 1d6. And it saves as a 6th level fighter, does typically have a treasure, and the range on those tail spikes when it's flying is 50 feet short range, 100 feet medium range, and 180 feet long range. And it says the creature grows 2 spikes per day. Its favorite food is humans or man. Manticores frequently attack humans, ambushing them with spike attacks, and the human group stops to rest. Another tactic is to stalk prey like a great cat, creeping up close on an unsuspecting victim, and then it fires off a barrage of tail spikes to bring the victim down, and then eats the victim. And then less frequently, a pack of manticores will stalk and attack a group of victims. So that is the how the Manticore was imagined in the original edition of the game. Now in AD&D, or 1st edition, we get the first image of the Manticore, which is this thing here. So it's got Old Man Wither's head, the bat wings, the kind of puny dorsal ridge, and the tuft of spikes on the tail. Armor class 4, hit dice 6+3, and again 1-3, 1-3 for the claws, and 1d8 for the bite. And then it has the tail attack, or the spike attack, which is a volley of 6 spikes to a maximum of 180 feet, and they deal 1d6 points of damage per hit. And then in 2nd edition, the Manticore again has armor class 4, 120 feet of movement on the ground, 180 feet in the air, 6+3 hit dice. Most of this is all the same. Now, the tail spikes have changed sometimes. Just want to verify here what it says about their a volley of 1d6 tail spikes, and each tail spike causes 1d6 points of damage. And the Manticore can fire 4 such volleys each day. The spikes regrow the next day, so it can fire a maximum of 24, depending on what your rolls are on the 1d6. But also in 2nd edition, this is the first time, at least in the source books that I have, the first time that I could find the Lammasu. And there's a lesser and a greater Lammasu. And in addition to the appearance of the Lammasu, as the drill sergeant told us, being so obviously different between the Lammasu and the Manticore, there's also a lesser and a greater Lammasu. But notice that their diet is herbivorous, so they eat grass or plants, whereas the Manticore is a meat eater. And the alignment of these Lammasu is lawful good. So now you can see if we kind of discount the drill sergeant's exhortations, and if you do see one of these creatures from a distance, you can see how it might get you into trouble if you mistake one for the other. If you think that the creature approaching you is a Lammasu and it turns out to be a Manticore, well, you could be in for a really bad fight. At the same time, if you think the creature approaching you is a Manticore and you decide, well, the best defense is a good offense, and you start shooting first, and it turns out to be a Lammasu, well, you might get yourself into trouble there too. Partly because the Lammasu are a higher hit dice monster and are tougher than the Manticore. So if you pick a fight with one of these guys unnecessarily, it might not go so well for you. They have a similar movement speed on the ground for the lesser, but they're slightly tougher at 7+7 hit dice. The greater have a much faster movement and flying speed, and 12+7 hit dice. Also, their attack rolls are far more potent. The lesser needs a 13 to hit an armor class 0, but the greater only needs to roll a 7 on a 20-sided die to hit an armor class 0. And then also they deal quite a bit more damage, 2d6 per attack instead of the 3d6. And Lammasu are concerned for welfare and safety of good beings. So they almost always enter combat if they see good creatures being threatened in the way least likely to cause harm to the good beings. They're able to become invisible or dimension door at will. They radiate protection from evil 10-foot radius. They have cure serious wounds and cure critical wounds. And 10% of them can speak holy word as well. So they, in the greater Lammasu, their protection from evil is a 20-foot radius, and then they also have that holy word capability, and they are fighting against evil. So this is, and it says, of course, Lammasu harbor an especially strong dislike for Lamias and Manticores, and some foolish people confuse Lammasu for Manticores, which does little to improve the Lammasu disposition toward them. All right, so that is the Lammasu. This is the Manticore. And one of the weird things is that in 5th edition and even in 4th edition, it looks like the Lammasu didn't survive into 4th edition, and it hasn't been carried over to 5th edition. And even with all of the third-party sources that you can look at in a source like Kobold Fight Club, where it not only pulls 5th edition monsters from the published sources, but from a whole array of other third-party sources, there's not a 5th edition version of the Lammasu. So I don't quite know why the Lammasu were not brought forward. But that means that at your table, that's one of your reskinning options, is you can reskin a Manticore as a Lammasu. So in 3rd edition, the Lammasu, again, they're noble creatures concerned with the welfare and safety of all good beings. They, let's see, let's take a look at, okay, there's a Lammasu, and then there's the Golden Protector, which is a celestial half-dragon Lammasu. So, very different creatures indeed. So walking speed of 30 feet and fly speed of 60 feet. Armor class of 20 for the Lammasu, or 29 for the celestial half-dragon Lammasu. The full attack is 2 claws, and they're plus 12 melee, 1d6 plus 6 damage. The half dragon gets the plus 19 melee on the claws and a bite for 1d6 plus 9 damage on the claws and 1d8 plus 4 on the bite. Also, of course, it has a breath weapon, and they can both do the pounce and the rake, where they land from on it with all 4 and use all 4 feet to attack. And then, of course, all of the different skills and feats and everything that they get, since those came in to vogue in 3rd edition. And the Manticore, it's got an armor class 17. It's got the claw plus 10, 2d4 plus 5, or 6 spikes, plus 8 ranged attack. And then notice it can do the claws and bite as melee attacks, or 6 spikes ranged attacks. So it's not a valid attack pattern for it to grapple somebody with its claws, turn its tail around, and try to shoot them with spikes at point blank range. It always uses the spikes from range. And then, of course, this is the 3rd edition image. We've already seen that. And now in 4th edition, I feel a little bit cheated because we only get one version of the Manticore in 4th edition. So there's, sometimes when we're doing these, we look at 4th edition and we see there's 3-4 different kind of levels or challenge ratings of Manticores that you can prepare, or monsters that you can prepare for different parties. But in the case of the Manticore, it's only one version. And the Manticore is a level 10 skirmisher, 210 hit points, armor class 26, fly speed or movement speed of 30 feet or 6 squares, fly speed of 40 feet or 8 squares, and then overland flight of 10 hexes per day. And then the spike attack is plus 15 versus AC, and 1d8 plus 5 damage. And then Manticore's Fury makes a claw attack and a spike attack in any order and shifts. And then a spike volley, guided sniper. A Manticore with a rider gains a +2 bonus to attack rolls with its spike attack and spike volley power. So this imagines, 4th edition imagines Manticores being something that you can tame and ride. Basically in the lore of other editions, that is kind of an outlier because all of the other editions make this thing seem like it's not a very intelligent monster. Now, of course, if you have a druid or you have a spell like Animal Friendship or Dominate Monster or something like that, depending on the edition of the game, well, then all bets are off. And as long as you can keep it, under the control of your mind, then of course you can do that. But the problem is you got to keep that control going all the time. All right. And then in 5th edition, we have the 5th edition Manticore. And the Manticore has an armor class of 14, 68 hit points. And notice its challenge rating. It's a challenge rating of 3, which means that it basically is good for really low-level parties. And so the only time you might use it against a high-level party is maybe if the high-level party gets ambushed by other monsters and they're in the middle of a fight, and it looks like the high-level party is having too easy a time with the orc ambush or the hobgoblin ambush or whatever you set up for them. Well, maybe just have a Manticore fly by and start shooting tail spikes into the battlefield. Of course, the Manticore is probably not going to care whether it hits, which combatants it hits, because it's just looking to cause mayhem and get a free meal out of the deal. All right, so the tail spike regrowth. Manticore has 24 tail spikes. Use spikes regrow when the Manticore finishes a long rest. And then the multi-attack, it's 3 attacks. 1 with bite and 2 claws, or 3 attacks with tail spikes. And the bite and the claw are obviously melee attacks, +5, 1d8 +3 for the bite, and the claw is 1d6 +3. The tail spikes are ranged with a regular range of 100 feet or a long range of 200 feet, and they deal 1d8 +3 damage on each of these attacks. And Manticores are they're fierce killers that hunt far and wide for prey. They work together to take down particularly large or dangerous creatures, sharing the meal once a kill is made. Manticore begins and then lands and uses its claws and bite. And when it's outdoors and outnumbered, it uses wings to stay aloft, attacking from a distance. And then monstrous relationships. Manticores serve wicked masters that treat them well and provide regular prey. Manticore might provide aerial support for an orc horde or a hobgoblin army. Another could serve as a hunting companion for a hill giant chief or guard the entrance to a Lamma's lair. And the Manticore's greatest territorial rivals include chimeras, griffins, peritons, and wyverns. Manticores hunting as a pack have the advantage of greater numbers. And then, in addition to these creatures, Manticores fear dragons and avoid them. So, I guess, yes, the other thing, it doesn't really talk about characters having Manticores as mounts or pets, but very tough, much larger, much higher CR monsters like giants or Lammas or those other types of things might have a Manticore as a guardian or as a pet, or something like that, or an entire orc or hobgoblin army might employ some manticores because of the fact that there's always going to be fresh meat available after a battle that they can feed it. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look back at our slides again. Okay, so we talked about how manticores are CR3 monsters, which means they're going to be good against low-level parties. That's why I said at the beginning that when you have a monster that flies and that has the ability to do both melee attacks and ranged attacks, it makes it very tough for these low-level parties to deal with. Now, level 1, it's considered it's just beyond the threshold of a deadly encounter. And I have a little bit of a story about that in a couple of minutes. Level 2, a single manticore is a medium encounter for a group of 5 level 2 PCs. And you can add a young Kuthric to make it a hard encounter. And then at level 3, it's an easy encounter for the party. But if you add 2 manticores, that makes it a hard encounter for the party. Now, talking about the level 1. There is an adventure that I ran about a year ago, and it's an adventure right out of the book, written by Wizards of the Coast themselves. And at level 1, they offer an array of choices to the party that, there's like 3 places they could go, and each one of the places they could go, there's a monster that they wind up having to fight and defeat. So, of course, when they heard about the choices, which they don't know what the monster is, but when they heard about the 3 missions, they chose the mission where the monstrous opponent for a first level party was a manticore. Well, when they got there and the manticore started attacking, the party was excited because they thought, oh, cool, we're going to get to have these tail spikes. Well, on the manticore's first turn, from its spike volley, it wound up knocking 2 of the PCs unconscious with tail spikes. So now, before half the party has gone, 2 of their number are down on the ground bleeding out. And I realized, okay, this could very easily turn into a TPK on their first fight, because this was, again, a bunch of players that were relatively new to the game and didn't know a whole lot. So what I did is in the following rounds, I basically fudged 2 of the spike attacks, because in 5th edition these guys only get 3 spikes every round. They don't get 6 spikes like they did in other editions. I fudged 2 of the spike attacks and just called them misses, and I only had it fire 1 spike. And even then, I think it damaged 2 more party members to bloodied by the time the thing actually finally landed. But by that time, they had also been able to go and administer healing potions to the 2 people that had been unconscious. So the entire party was able to fight the thing once it got on the ground using its claws and bite. And the claw and bite attacks are not as devastating because they don't do quite as much damage. And obviously, if you're in melee with it, the party can fight back. When it's up in the sky and firing at that range, I mean, this is a party that, I think 2 people one person had a bow, one person had a crossbow, and one of the archers was one of the people that got knocked unconscious in the first round. So, and it's like, all right, now there's only one person that can fight back against that thing, and it's able to, by the book, it's able to fire 3 tail spikes every round. So in my opinion, if you're playing with new players or players that are new to 5th edition and haven't quite figured out how to run their characters and how to do, have good party chemistry and knows what each other's strengths and everything are, I would probably save a Manticore for a level 2 party and not throw it at a level 1 party, because it could be a bit of a handful. Now, if you have experienced players who, are tactically good when it comes to fighting, and they think about all of these types of things, they could probably deal with a Manticore just fine at first level. So just keep that in mind if you're a DM. All right, so fighting against Manticores as players, what are some tactics you can use? Well, first thing is watch the skies. The Manticore will always try to use its ability to fly to gain a surprise attack on earthbound adventurers, or it will attack adventurers when they're flying on a machine like an airship, or if they're on a flying carpet or something like that. Then the other thing that you can do as a player is you can taunt the monsters. And this is where you, as a DM, kind of have to roll with the combat RP of your players. Remember that Manticores are clever, but they're not terribly smart. And they're also very, very irritable. So taunting them is, you gotta give the party a good chance of kind of making the monster get sloppy, because what, that puny thing on the ground is taunting me? Oh, I'm going to go show it, who's boss, and go in and maybe do suboptimal attacks just because it's getting mad and being reckless. And that'll also give a little bit of personality to the fight and make the fight a little bit more fun for the players as well. If you let them sort of have the ability to influence the way a monster attacks by, calling it out or taunting it for whatever reason. Okay, now if you're on the other side of the table, if you're the DM, I told you the story about using this with new adventurers. So I would be careful about that, and that's really the only tactical thing I have about using Manticores. I mean, I think the rest of it is pretty obvious. It's going to try to attack from the sky, and it's a predator, and it's a predator with something a little bit more than animal intelligence. So it's got kind of a predatory cunning. So you might be able, you might say that it would understand, like, when there's partial cloud cover, where it might be able to use the clouds and attack from such a direction that its shadow won't give away its presence in the air. And if the PCs aren't necessarily looking up all the time, that might give it an advantage. Or if there's kind of low clouds or something like that, it might even be able to go along in the belly of the clouds and then just sort of dip down for a few seconds and fire off those tail spikes, and then climb back up into the clouds to make it harder for the PCs to see where it is, and be able to use that until it decides it finally is ready to come down and fight the characters on the ground. Okay, so now where would you put this in a campaign? So Manticore is a monster that can be fun for low-level parties to battle. Has a lot of the true monster characteristics. It's kind of creepy with that humanoid face and its ability to speak. It flies, and it has multiple attack modes with the tail spikes and its claws and bite. Now, of course, also it's got those teeth and those tail spikes, which young PCs, first level, second level PCs, a lot of them are going to want to take those as souvenirs or trophies of the battle. And there might even be, whether it's in a homebrew thing that you create or whether it's in an actual ritual or magic item or magical spell, there might actually be a use for the components of a Manticore. I was watching a stream that Matt Colville did. It was a stream that was a couple of years old, but it was new to me. And he was talking about one of the things in his game, which I thought was kind of clever. No matter what kind of monster they're fighting, if you're able to successfully use medicine checks and nature checks to harvest some of the blood, it gives you it allows you to make potions that are it allows you to make one kind of potion. I think if you're able to harvest its brain, it gives you the ability to control that monster, to use part of its brain in creating a scroll or a potion that lets you control the monster. And then if you're able to harvest its heart, it does something else. So I thought that was kind of cool to just have that as kind of a paradigm, that no matter what kind of monster you're fighting, if you're able to harvest different parts of it, you can create potions or scrolls that give you certain influence or protection over it. I know in one of the cases, it's the blood. If it's like a poisonous monster, the blood would give you immunity to the poison. If you created a potion with that, but the Manticores aren't poisonous in 5th edition. So now, here's some other ways you might use the monster. Maybe there's a missing important NPC, say a baron or a baroness. It's possible that became a Manticore meal. Or maybe a caravan comes into the town where your low-level characters are based, and they tell of an attack, and they have some dead guards and spike-impaled wagons to prove it. And so then sending the PCs off to go find and deal with this Manticore, if you can avenge the death of a minor noble or help a rich merchant, that could start the PCs off with a reputation to make them heroes among the local people and their leaders. So it's just one idea of how you might use a Manticore to sort of jumpstart the reputation gain in the starting area for your PCs. All right, now, as I foreshadowed before, one of the things that you could do with the Manticore is reskin it as a Lammasu. So the Lammasu isn't in any official published source, nor is it in any of the third-party sources that I could find for D&D 5e yet either. So the Lammasu are kind of the good version of Manticores with the absence of tail spikes. Lammasu also have feather wings, and they have a pleasant disposition and a vegetarian diet. And if you have a custom setting, you could kind of go back and cross the streams. One of the things I find myself being influenced by from many, many, many years ago is my many, many hours of watching the original Star Trek, the old 1960s, with Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock and Dr. McCoy and all of that stuff. And there was an episode of that where there was a creature, actually it was a person, that because of some silly transporter accident, their personality got split into two identical, at least physically identical versions of them, but one was all aggressive and hostile and everything, and the other was very meek and docile and mild and everything like that. And maybe if you have a setting for your low-level characters, you might say that some wizard had been doing experiments on a monster and had somehow split it into two halves, and now you have the Lammasu, which is the good version, and the Manticore, which is the evil version. And what the wizard wants the party to do is to go and subdue both of them. Don't kill them, but subdue both of them and bring them back to the wizard's lab so that he can put them back together as one entire creature and undo the mistake that he made in the lab earlier. So that would add a little bit of extra complexity and kind of a weird thing where it's almost like, okay, these things, they look very much alike, but there's a difference in them and in the way they interact with the party. So that's a possibility there. All right. Yeah, and okay, so Skylin. Yeah, this is a fun creature. Okay, yeah, three level ones against one of these, and then sneak attack damage from the rogue with his bow. Yep, that's tail spike and teeth as components. And you could turn the tail spikes into poison, or say that its bite is poison. Maybe both the bite and the tail spikes are poison, and that would make it a slightly tougher version of the monster. Yes, all of those are good thoughts there. Okay, so let's see. Do we have any questions about the Manticore at this time? I don't see that we do, so I'm going to go ahead into the wrap-up, and then I'll double-check again. I have been DM Gallibond. Tonight we have been looking at the Manticore for Monster Monday. I have 3 other weekly shows that I do, and all 3 of them should be back on tap for this week, now that the Independence Day weekend is over. Thursday night, we will be back with the Sword Coast Chronicles. Saturday night, we'll be here with Session 8 of the Saturday Night Greyhawk game. And Sunday, we will be back with Session 101 of the Walker of Waterdeep, starting on our next 100 sessions of that game. Also this week, I will be appearing as a player, a guest on another stream on Wednesday night. So Wednesday night at 8 p.m., it's on The Action Sturge on Twitch. And The Action Sturge, it's all one word. And Sturge is S-T-U-R-G-E, as opposed to the monster S-T-I-R-G-E. But it's going to be a dungeon crawl. We're doing a 5th edition version of White Plume Mountain, and I will be one of the players. And the interesting thing about what they do on the Action Sturge is that as you're watching the stream and you accumulate points, you get to influence the story by either throwing out boons or banes to the DM or to the party. So you can actively, the viewing audience can actively help the DM or can help the party, or can hinder the DM or can hinder the party. So it's kind of fun to see what happens with that. I've watched their stream a few times, and I get quite a kick out of it. So that'll be Wednesday at 8 p.m. Then, of course, the dates and times of my normal streams. All right. Okay. Let's see. Doesn't look like we have any other questions. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and we will go into the end credits here. I'll bring the music back up and we'll go look for somebody to raid. Alright, so let's see what we have. Okay. Alright, so let's see. Who is... Tackrat is doing her art. Okay, so we'll go ahead and we'll read her. Alright, everybody. Hope you have a great week. We will talk to you next time. Hope we see you on the next stream. Good night, everybody.